Hello Exams, it's Remy here. This is an intelligent stacking wonder build that I have been experimenting for the past few weeks. I personally felt the traditional way of Int stacking using Crown of Ice and the 12 passive clusters is not optimal, so I decided to make my own Int stacker with my own twist and a lower cost in general. My current iteration of Int stacker is able to do all contents in the game, including Wave 30 simulacrums, all of the pinnacle encounters, and Feared all released at once. I have only spent roughly 90x for my current build, but with the volatile market prices and other content creators making their own Int stackers, the prices of the gear are increasing day by day as it passes on. So I have also made some alternative lower cost gear that you can utilize for the build. This build utilizes an anoint called Vengeance Cascade. I highly recommend to check out Captain Lens 9 video on this topic for a greater detail regarding this particular mechanic. For the defenses, this build has an 80% evade chance and a 60% spell suppression with incandescent heart for elemental damage mitigation, on top of insane ES leech with Ghost River and an ES gain on hit Watcher's Eye. This build could recover back to full ES under half a second, which makes it valuable for Wave 30 simulacrums. On the other day, I have also made an Int Stacker Wander for just 6 Exiles, but I personally don't recommend people to play that setup as it is insanely glass cannon. I also personally advise playing this as a league starter. Even though I just made it work for 6x, it doesn't mean the gear will be 6x on the first day of the league, so I won't be covering that setup on this video. I only recommend playing this character as a second character on the league, only when you have all of the Int stacking gear prepared inside your stats tab. I also advise leveling with this build. I only recommend leveling this as another build such as Hollow Palm or Exsanguinate, because you will experience a painful journey if you do decide to level with this build. One of the most important mechanics in this build is Vengeance Cascade. Although it could double your damage, but with a poor cursor positioning, you could deal 0 damage instead. So what I meant by that is how Vengeance Cascade works. So if I hit a boss, for example, if Last to Die is a boss, and if I have poor cursor positioning, for example, if I place my cursor right here, you can see all of the projectiles were intercepted by Hydro Spear, and none of the projectiles are hitting Last to Die. So let me show you again. You can see there is no projectile that is hitting Last to Die. So ideally, you want to place your cursor on top of the boss, which you want to name lock the boss, so all of the projectiles will hit the boss, and then when it splits, it hits the Hydro Spear, then it returns back to you. So this is the ideal situation that you want to have. So now let's move on to the gear section of the build. So first of all, this is my wand. So my wand is pretty generic, which is the lightning damage per int, spell damage per int, and attack speed and critical strike chance. So this is not the ideal wand that you want to look for. So I will teach you how to craft a wand. So if you are on a super tight budget, first of all, you just spam metallic fossils until you hit something like this. And if you have an open suffix, you just craft on either attack speed or critical strike chance. So when you have a higher budget, so you want to start off with an Awakener's Orb. So you want to awaken orb 2 stats in. One of them is the Shaper mod, this one. You want to awaken this one, and the Elder mod, spell damage per 16 inch. You could also get it from Hunter mod, but it depends on you. So when you awaken orb, it depends on what stats you actually get. So I will start off assuming that you don't have an open prefix. This is an important part. So let's assume that you don't have any open suffix either. So let's put on some random suffixes. So let's say you start off with a full stats weapon. So what you want to do here is you want to use the bench, and you want to use harvest, then use reforge keep prefix. You want to look for an open suffix. So now when you have an open suffix, you want to go to the bench, and then you want to craft prefixes cannot be changed, and then you want to you want to use the Veld Chaos Orb here, right here. So in this case, I got a double suffix. This is not what I wanted, so I have to restart the craft, which is using the reforge keep prefix right here. And then I craft in prefix cannot be changed, and then Veld Chaos Orb again. So in this time, I only get one Veld suffix. So this is ideally what you want to look for. So you want to look for ideally with intelligence and critical strike chance, but in this case, if you got attack speed, this is also fine. So once you got this belt mod, you just go into the bench, and then you could just craft in critical strike chance. Where is it? So yeah, you just craft in critical strike chance, and then you call it a day. Make sure the critical strike chance is on max roll, because even just one roll off, you will do a lot less damage. So ideally, you want to look for a stat that is the strength, int, and crit. Let me show you guys, where is it? So yeah, this is the ideal mod that you want to look for on your wand. And if you are unable to get this, the second best is the dex, int, and attack speed. And you could also craft in mods to block what vel mods you could get. I personally recommend crafting these kind of mods, which is the damage per charges. So you could craft in these kind of stats to block the vel mod from rolling those kind of stats. So now let's assume that you managed to roll an open prefix. So when you are able to roll an open prefix, but you have some suffixes, let's say, let me go to the mod pool and add some random suffix. So let's say you have some suffixes right here, and if you, let me just assume that you have full suffixes on a case like this, but you have an open prefix. So what you want to do here first is you want to go to the bench, you want to craft in a random prefix, any prefix will work. Then you want to go to the harvest, then you want to use the reforged kit prefix for an open suffix. So once we have an open suffix, you want to immediately go to the bench, and then you go to the prefixes cannot be changed, and then you scour the entire one. So you will keep these two stats right here. So what you want to do here is you want to craft prefixes cannot be changed, and then you want to go to the syndicate and do a T4 S-Link slam. So on this case, it is a 50-50, either you hit a prefix mod or a suffix mod. Ideally, you want a suffix mod, but if you hit a prefix mod, you just hope that it's not a bad mod. So in this case, we got a prefix mod, and we hope that we don't have a bad stat. Alright, in this case, we got a kind of unlucky, which is a bad stat. We got the increased cold damage, which is not what we really wanted. And in this case, our one is pretty much finished. I mean in the sense that this is pretty much a brick. So your only way to salvage this is either you want to finish off the craft with multi-mod, or you just sell it off to other people and hope to annul this stat right here. But I will personally just buy a new one and just restart from the Awaken or again. So in the case, what prefix that we want to hunt for in our Veld mod is this one, the damage penetrate elemental resistance. This is the ideal stats you want to look for. The second best stat you can have is lightning damage. This one also works. Or you could also look for the spell damage. So this one is not a good one. So on this case, you just have to restart the entire craft. So this one is also not a good one, and this one is also not a good one. So you could also go with spell damage, but if you have the penetrate elemental resistance, always go for this instead. So let me see. There's one more that we could look for, which is a spell damage and non-chaos scan is extra. I think I could not find it. There we go, I found it. So this is the third best that you can look for, which is what I found on my wand. So if you do roll a prefix, so those you could just look for lightning damage, spell damage, and the best that you could have is penetrate elemental resistance. So ideally you want to get a suffix. So I got another prefix. So once you got a Veld suffix, ideally you want to look for again, which is the same as the previous one, which is the strength in and crit. So if you do got this kind of stats, do remember to go to your bench and roll this roll the stats. For example, the damage per charges. So your suffixes will not be able to roll those kind of stats. Anyway, let's say that you rolled a suffix and you got a stat that you don't want. You could always go to prefix cannot be changed and scour it, and then do another prefixes cannot be changed, and then you do an S-Link slam. So in this case, we got a prefix, you just hope for another bad stat, so another elemental resistance. But anyway, let's go back to the suffix. In this case, we got pretty much the same stuff. So if we don't get the stats that we want, we just do prefixes cannot be changed, scour, prefixes cannot be changed, S-Link Slam. This could get very expensive. So if you are unable to keep up the cost, you could just sell the one off with an open prefix. So in this case, we also did not got, I forgot to craft the mod to block the stats that we could get. So let's do that. Always remember to do that. I always forgot to do this. So yeah, okay, so once we got the stats that we want, this is the best stat we could have. The second best stat we could have is the dex in and attack speed. So let me find it. So this is the second best stat we could have. So we only accept 2 of the mods. One of them is the strength in crit, and second one is dex in attack speed. Those are the only 2 mods that we will be accepting on our suffix pool. So let's get back to that. So once we have our mod right here, let's say we got the ideal mod that we have. So we want to go to multi-mod it, and then we craft in attack speed. So if you got the attack speed, dex in attack speed, you just craft crit instead. But if you got the crit and strength in, you just craft in attack speed. Then you craft in the penetrate mod. So right here. And yeah, this is the ideal one that you want to look for. Then you just go to harvest, then you use the enchant with attack speed. So that is the ideal one that you could have. Okay, now moving on for the shield. So for the shield, we went with as a reflection. As a reflection is the BIS shield for our build because it has evasion, it has energy shield, it has all elemental resistance, it has int, and it has effect of curse. On top of a curse unaffected by curse, it is very, very good. So you can basically ignore all other hexes in basically any kind of curse in the game. So this one is almost impossible to beat. So this is I could say one of the best in slot shield for your build. Now for the helmet, you ideally want to look for int and percentage int, and for the helmet enchant, we ideally want to look for power siphon, fires 2 additional projectile. In here the notes I have mentioned the other stats you could look for the enchant in case the power siphon enchant is way too expensive. Let me see, where is it? So right here. So first one is a power siphon, fires 2 additional projectiles. Second one is sniper's mark, increase effect, and then third one is hydro spear, -6 resistance. These are the only 3 net enchantment that you want to look for. So now let's move on to craft Exile, and I will teach you how to craft the helmet. So first of all, you want to look for ideally an int base, either Hubris record, or you could also downgrade if you don't have the money. So for the eye level, you ideally want to look for 75 to 79. And if you don't have a currency to buy this eye level range, you could downgrade as far back to 72. So let's go with a 75. Make sure the base is not influenced. So we start off by spamming essence of spite. So if you don't have money, you can always downgrade your essence. So we just spam essence of spite until we get a double resist mod. Sorry, just get until you got a single resist mod right here, not double resist. So if you got a triple suffix and 1 single prefix, you could always use the beast, the suffix to prefix, and hope for it to hit the stun block recovery. So in this case, we did hit it, and we exactly want 2 prefix and 2 suffix. In this case, we want to craft a random prefix, any prefix will do, and then we will use a Hunter Exalted Orb to slam. It will guarantee percentage intelligence no matter what. So if you are on 75 or above, you could slam on a T1. So you got a T2 again, we got a T2 again, we got another tier 2. So here we got a tier 1. So if you are lower than 72, you will always get a tier 2. So let me show you eye level of this. So you can see on Hunter mod there is only intelligence, and the lowest roll for this is 75. You can see right here. So let's continue. So once you got your suffix done, you could always go to your bench and do a suffix cannot be changed. I need to remove the mod first. So you remove the mod, do a suffixes cannot be changed, and then you go to harvest, then reforge defense. And you could just spam this until you got a tier 1. So right here we got a tier 1 energy shield, then we just craft in a percentage energy shield right there. Then this is basically your helmet right there. So you just keep spamming essence. So the ideal situation is keep spamming essence until you have a single resist mod and then 2 prefix mod. So if you got a triple suffix, you could always use a beast. So yeah, this is basically how you craft the helmet. Now for the body armor, I went with Incandescent Heart instead because Incandescent Heart gives you a lot of damage. You could also look for a Scourge implicit and also a Corruption implicit, such as a +2. So let me show you. Incandescent Heart, you could always look for either a +2 Corruption, +2 Projectile, or you could also go for a +1 Socketed Gems, or the maximum energy shield, increased damage, or +1 to all maximum resistance. Those are the stats you could always look for. And ideally you want to look for the max roll gain 20% elemental damage as extra chaos. So this is the ideal stats you want to look for as the max roll. And the second roll you want to look for is the armor and energy shield, ideally as high as possible, but this will get very expensive. Expect to pay about 1 to 2x for just the base alone without corruptions. So now let's move on to the gloves. The gloves I went with Shapeless Touch because Shapeless Touch it will cap your accuracy rating, and it will also gives you a lot of evasion. For the corruption, always go for the attack has critical chance, and then for the Scourge implicit, it depends on you. I went with attack speed. You could also went with intelligence. You could also go with the other lightning damage support on your gloves. So this helps a lot of your KB damage clear. Now for the boots. So I will go on to Craft of Exile and teach you guys how to craft the boots. So for the boots, ideally you want to look for a dex in base, ideally a 2-tone boots right here. And for the base, for the eye level, you could look for anything between 75 to 100. And because we just want to roll the elusive on crit. And make sure you can have a Redeemer's influence or not, it doesn't really matter, but you want to look for a base with already an enchant, which is the damage penetrate 10% elemental resistance, and right here I have already covered right here. So for lab enchant, you want to look for damage penetrate 10%, make sure it is always 10%, not 6%, not 8%. And the second priority you could second lab enchant you could look for is the added lightning damage. Make sure it's 160, not 120 or lower. So once you got the base, let's just say that you don't have any influence. So you start off with just immediately slamming and Redeemer's Exalted Orb on it. So after that, you just spam Essence of Spite until you get a double resist mod. So this should take a little bit of time. So let's just assume that the chaos resistance is just a normal resistance instead of chaos resist, because chaos resist does nothing to our build since you are already immune to chaos resistance. So let's just assume that we got a double resistance because I want to speed up the video a bit. So let's just assume that we got a double resist roll from just spamming Essence of Spite. So what you want to do here is you want to go to the bench, you want to craft suffixes cannot be changed, and then immediately go to your harvest, then reforge crit. This will guarantee the elusive on crit. So once you got the elusive on crit, you want to do another suffixes cannot be changed, and then you want to go to the syndicate and Asling slam it and hope it hits the suffixes cannot be changed. In this case, we missed it, so you just do a random unveil, and then you do it again, which is reforge crit, and it will guarantee the elusive on crit. Then craft in suffixes cannot be changed and Asling slam again. So we didn't hit it again, so we restart, which is pretty much the same. Reforge crit, suffixes cannot be changed, and then Asling slam. We missed again, so there's also a chance when you do the reforge crit right here, you could hit additional sets. Let's say, yeah, you can see right here we got a maximum mana right here. So in this case, if you do still have an open prefix, it doesn't really matter. You just hope that the Ascending Veil hits the mana. So in this case, it did hit the mana, which is what we wanted. So we just unveil and look for a movement speed. So once you got a movement speed, you just finish it off with the evasion and energy shield craft. So it is right here. Also, do remember that you could always craft a mod to block the veil mods from rolling. So in the case that when your Reforged crit, let me go back to an example. So in a case where your Reforged crit could hit 4 sets, yeah, there we go. We got a field prefix. So when we got a field prefix, like in this case, we have no choice but to go to harvest and then do a Reforged keep suffix, and we hope for an open prefix. So once you got open prefix, it's pretty much the same. Suffixes cannot be changed, and then harvest Reforged crit, and then block it again and do an S-Link Slam. So the ideal S-Link Slam that we want to look for is the cannot be chilled and movement speed. So this is the ideal sets you want to look for, and then we just finish off with the craft. So if you are unable to look for the cannot be chilled, you just look for onslaught on kill or just movement speed in general. And if you can't even look for, if you don't even got the movement speed, like for example in my case, which I got let me show you in game. In this case, I got the evasion, so I just crafting a movement speed instead. But anyway, let's continue on with the amulet. So for the amulet, amulet is basically the same as ring and belt, so we just spam essence of spite until we are satisfied with our stats. So for the ring, I just go with double resist, and also goes with the same for the belt. I just go with double resist and maximum energy shield. Now for the first ring, I went with Call of the Brotherhood. For the implicit, I went with percentage increase intelligence. You could also go with the Scourge implicit, which is the plus intelligence. This will be pretty expensive. I found this by myself, and the main reason when you went with Call of the Brotherhood is because cold damage is able to freeze monsters. It provides us a lot of survivability boost. Okay, now for the flask, I went with Dying Sun. Dying Sun increases our clear and our single target damage, and we went with Evasion Flask, a Quicksilver Flask for more movement speed during clear, Test of Hate for physical damage mitigation, and a Silver Flask for more damage. You could also look for a Stignate Flask for more evasion. Now for the cluster jewels, I will start off with the cluster jewels first. So one of them you have to look for Feel the Fight and Veterans Defender. So Feel the Fight will allows us to get mana leech, but if you are unable to get the Feel the Fight and you got something like Feed the Fury instead, you must allocate 1 point for this mana leech, or else you will not be able to leech any mana at all, and you have issues on sustaining mana. So one of them must be Feel the Fight and Veteran Defender, and make sure it's 8 passive and it has 3 notables, because we will be only allocating 2 notables like this. Now for this one is basically the same, except it's not Feel the Fight, it is Feed the Fury instead. Now for the medium cluster, we went with Precise Retaliation and Pressure Points, and for the rest of the stats, you ideally look for resistance or just attributes in general. And for the small cluster, I went with a Reservation Efficiency, and you want to look for Int and Maximum Energy Shield. If possible, look for the lightning resist or just resist in general. And also Sublime Form is mandatory because we were unable to fit Grace without it. Now for the split personality, so this one will be very expensive because I have intelligence and maximum energy shield. So if you are on a budget, you can just look for an intelligence and evasion instead. So this one is also the same. Now for the unique jewels I have used for the build, one of them is Fertile Mind with the reservation efficiency implicit. This is also very important because we don't have a lot of anti-mana. So yeah, you just look for reservation efficiency on your Fertile Mind, and this will convert like all of the dexterity within this radius, which is about 40. And ideally you want to look for the max roll and plus intelligence, which is 24. Now for this Thread of Hope, you want to look for a large ring, and then of course, the elemental resistance penalty must be as low as possible, and we could locate Mage Bane, Reflexes, Overcharge, and Foresight right here. And then the other one is Hubris, so in this case, I got a Frenzy Charge on hit right here, and I also got an 80% damage right here. I can show you in game. You can see right here, I got a 80% increased damage on this particular notable. And yeah, this is basically what I have on my Elegant Hubris. And you could also look for more damage modes. For example, 80% damage right here, but I am unable to fit all of the passives into the build currently, so I just went with this particular Elegant Hubris. So if you are unable to look for a one node frenzy right here, you could always look for a two node frenzy right here. Let me show you. You could always look for two nodes frenzy on this kind of spot, but it all depends on whether or not you could find one from these kind of places. And then for the Watcher's Eye, I went with the energy shield gain on hit, and then spell suppression and evade while affected by grace. So if you are unable to afford this kind of Watcher's Eye, your main target is the energy shield gain on hit while affected by discipline. That is your main target right there. And then for the Abyss Jewels, I just went with maximum energy shield and all elemental resistance. So if you could also look for a Noble Jewel. I also included in the notes right here, so you could just read it right there if you are curious about it. Alright, now for the passive tree, so this is a level 97, sorry, this should be a level 97. Let me fix it. Okay, so this is currently a level 97 passive tree, and you can see right there, this is all of the notables I picked. So one important note that I want to say is point blank. So I currently have an incandescent heart with point blank, so I did not allocate. But if you don't have one, obviously, because it's insanely rare, you just allocate point blank right here. And for the other stuff that I want to mention that is very important is this node right here, which is Particle Perfection, because without this node we would have a very low mana pool, and this would be very annoying for long boss fights because you could notice that you would run out of mana very quickly. And then the second one I want to mention is this one, the increased attributes. You could see right here, let me show you. If I pick 5% increased attributes, I get 1615 int, and if I grab this one instead, you can see right here, I get more int instead, but my strength is being tanked. If you do have enough strength rolls and dexterity rolls, you could always look for this mastery instead of the 5% increased attributes, because the flat intelligence is way better than the attributes for my current situation. Always look for PoE. And then the second part is this one. I want to mention about this, which is the critical strike chance also increased by suppress spell damage. So obviously, if you don't have the Watcher's Eye, you would have this Watcher's Eye. You would have a lower crit chance. So you could always drop this one to get more damage from your Elegant Hubris. It all depends on if you could find a good Elegant Hubris or not. And then for this one, we went with the effect of non-damaging elements. This one is also very important because it increases our shock value by a lot. You could actually notice I gain about like 5 to 10% shock value on bosses like Cyrus. This won't be able to increase numbers on PoE, but it will have some effect on your game. And the other one is this Node Mesh Intent. This one also gives you some minor damage boost, but ideally you want to get more damage from your Elegant Hubris if possible. And if you are unable to get more damage right there, you can always allocate this one. You can also allocate a lightning resist if you are unable to cap your resist right here. So this is all about the passive tree. Now let's move on to our Ascendancy. So the main reason I went with Scion instead of other Ascendancy is because of the passive points that Scion gives, and Scion also gives us the stun immunity. Stun immunity is very important because as a CI build, we will always get stunned if we don't have any sort of stun immunity. So the main reason I did not went with Deadeye is because how fast shot works. Fast shot is extremely annoying to me to play because you have to constantly stay about 35 units away from the boss, and some bosses have some extremely deadly range attacks such as Kosis, and if you are staying close to Kosis, he would absolutely do nothing at all. But if you stay far away, his range attacks are extremely dangerous. So I believe that having fast shot is actually a survivability loss, so I did not went with Deadeye. And then for Raider, Raider has a lot of defenses and also a lot of clear, but she does not offer anything for single target damage. And now for Assassin, the main reason I did not went with Assassin is because I am already near crit cap, even without Assassin, so Assassin is pretty pointless at this point when you are able to crit cap that easily. And I did not went with Occultist is because Occultist is primarily made for clear. She does not have anything for single target damage either. And her 4th Ascendancy is kinda useless because your first 2 Ascendancy must be getting this. You also must get Veil Bastion because you want the stun immunity. And then for the last one is you have to, this is in my opinion kinda useless Ascendancy point. She does not give a lot of stuff, and she also does not have the bonus points that Scion have. Oh, also when you are going with Deadeye, Raider, or Assassin, you must look for the avoid stun boots because, as I said again, as a CI character, you will always get stunned if you don't have an avoid being stunned stuff. Now for Bandit, always look for +2 passive points, and for the Pantheon, I went with Brine King for cannot be frozen, and then I also went with Tukohama because we are stationary at some fights. For example, on coasts, I always stay stationary, I don't move a lot, so Tukohama with additional physical damage reduction is very good. Alright, now for the gem sections of the build, so I went with Power Siphon. So Power Siphon with Barrage is your single target damage setup. So Trinity is mandatory when you are running Call of the Brotherhood setup, and we went with critical damage and Awaken Elemental damage to attacks and Awaken Adder Lightning damage. Make sure you do have a maximum amount of quality. For Trinity, always look for 23 if possible. The same goes for Barrage, but I just don't have the quality for it. Anyway, one important part I want to mention is the Awakened elemental damage to attacks. So if you are not level 5, so let me show you. If you're on level 4, you could see you don't have the immune to reflect damage. You can see right there. So if you don't have a level 5 Awakened elemental damage to attacks, you could not do any sort of reflect. So for example, on bosses such as at Ziri, if you don't have this level 5 gem, you would get one-shotted by you will one-shot yourself because you will always hit a reflection thanks to Sniper's Mark. Now for the clones, I went with Kinetic Blast and Awaken Fork instead of GMP, and Divergent Kinetic Blast increases area effect per fork. So with Awaken Fork and you fork additional 2 times, you could just have some massive clear right there. So Trinity again is pretty much mandatory for any kind of Call of the Brotherhood setup. And I went with Inspiration setup for the last one because I like additional crit chance for more shatters. But if you want to be immune to reflect damage, you could also go with the Awakened elemental damage with attacks instead. And for the auras, I went with Discipline, Valkyries, and Precision. You don't need Enlighten 4, just go with Enlighten 3 because Enlighten 4 is extremely expensive. There is no out quality needed, and you don't really need the quality on any of these gems. Now for the Arcane Sprint setup, I have Elemental Weakness. It must be on default, don't look for any other alternate elements. And then for Frost Shield, I went with Divergent because Divergent absorbs more damage. Arcane Sprint on default, and I also got an Alamanus Predator. Alamanus Predator has a -4 to all resistance. It is basically the same as a -9 helmet, but instead of -9, it's -4, and it only affects one target at a time. You could always put it on left click because it doesn't have any cast type. It also does not have an mana cost, so you could just put it down on your left click and it will auto mark enemies. So for the Spellslinger, I went with the you actually don't need any alternate quality, so you just support Hydro Spear and Sniper's Mark in it. So for the Hydro Spear, I went with more AoE because I wanted to cover more radius for the exposure. So you could also look for Onslaught if you don't have the Onslaught on hit ring. So when you don't have Onslaught on hit ring, you could always look for an Onslaught support, but I just find this extremely inconsistent because sometimes I just kill bosses before Onslaught could even give me an Onslaught buff. Oh, and I also forgot to mention about the ring too, which is the Onslaught on hit ring. So if you are unable to afford an Onslaught on hit ring, you just look for an Opal ring instead. Alright, now for the last one, which is the mobility and utility, I went with Dash. Divergent Dash gives you phasing when you dash. You could also look for a second wind if you want more charges, but that's depend on you. And also when Berserk, the main reason is in Berserk caps on level 8 because of my strength requirement. I don't have enough strength requirement, and for the sigil power, I just went with level 21. You could also look for Phantasmal, but Phantasmal reduces the amount of cost, and a level 21 sigil power is also very expensive to purchase. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you want to see more content like this in the future, please subscribe, and I hope you all have a great day and see you guys next time.